Chapter 31 XXXI. Tang Xiandai. The Emperor is a songstress, isn't he? Lister, puffing on his cigarette, said. Anyway, the East Coast is far from the capital. Unlike the inland where people are terrified of tigers, I can talk whatever I want. I admit the Emperor is very strong, but if I ally with Bhima Koshais and take his place, then become king of Bhima, and send Shadi to seduce his daughter, then wait for him to die of old age, Shadi will naturally take the throne. I can then kill Shadi and become the ruler of Erin. How will the Emperor deal with that? That's a brilliant idea. Shadi was speechless and rolled his eyes. Surprisingly, such feminine movements. Volman was greatly shocked and added, women nowadays don't fall for the tough guy with a soft heart anymore. They appreciate your androgynous style. Your current status is equivalent to a Genshin Impact player who is a fitness coach, rapper, former military instructor, barbecue restaurant owner, and doesn't smoke traditional cigarettes. You've already taken all the benefits, haven't you? The flower language of steel wool is patience and wealth. Rain added, wait a minute. Micah noticed the blind spot. This plan doesn't seem to require you to become king at all. It's completely meaningless. As long as Shadi launches an attack, the Erin Empire will be destroyed. Hee hee. Shadi sneered, veins bulging on his forehead. Lister was greatly shocked. Indeed, it was true. He said seriously, as the captain, I order you to go and seduce the Emperor's daughter. I will allocate 30 gold dragons from the public funds for travel expenses, skincare products, hotel room expenses, and training fees for 10 times the Kaioken experience in brothels. Black Sail only needs to wait for the Emperor to die of old age in Heavenly Kingdom Port to conquer the Western continent. Wow, there are brothels with those kinds of spiritual time chambers? What kind of cultivation can you achieve there? Volman was puzzled. I already said it's the 10 times Kaioken with all stats increased tenfold. It can easily kill not only humans, but even monsters. This is how Ren commented. The rest of the people had already left the navigation room, showing no interest whatsoever in the absurd conversation. The orders for all the supplies for the voyage were placed yesterday and will be delivered to the city gradually. Delivery is not included in the secret port package. Swan and I will go to the city later to rent 10 carriages and ask the sailors on the ship to help transport the goods and move them onto the ship. They shouldn't be idle all day and become lazy. They will have to work hard once they are at sea. As Finn spoke, she also instructed AUX and the others to keep an eye on things and assign them tasks whenever possible, such as training them in combat skills or learning carpentry from Haywood. This would help them resolve any ship-related problems more efficiently during the voyage. Upon reaching the deck, they found several crew members looking disoriented, trembling, and muttering prayers as if possessed. What's wrong? AUX inquired. They were curious why I was wearing a helmet, so I showed it to them. Haywood spoke innocently, his helmet being the kind that only revealed a slit in his eyes, but it had already been put back on. Look at them. All of them are getting to work, Morrison scolded. The next day, noon, the Earl originally intended to sell the gift lister through a channel, but after some thought, he decided it would be better to use it to increase loyalty. There are only about 30 sailors on the ship now, not too many. 1 bottle of wood elf fruit wine and some high-grade tobacco for each of you. I'm completely honest with you guys, so you'll be loyal to me. Mimi is turning over her intestines. Morrison looked at the satisfied sailors on deck and said that they couldn't believe they were experiencing something like this in their lives, and they felt a mix of emotions. All right, the first mate, Brother Shah, and I are heading to the feast at Hongmen. We need to get into the city beforehand to make some preparations. I trust you with the ship, Lister said to AUX. Brother AO is a tough guy who doesn't talk much. He, along with the human rights card and the supermodel card, can be called the 3 major forces of Black Sail. He's a data monster. Why don't we have Swan go with you? If anything happens, he can come back and report. AUX thought Swan could also be useful. The people of Thieves Guild were all skilled in crooked and wicked things. Theft, infiltration, lockpicking, cheating, assassination, and they even had a group of sorcerers who cast spells. They were basically omnipotent in anything related to despicable and lowlifes. Swan might not be able to kill many enemies in a direct confrontation, but if he sneaks in at night, he'll be in for a rough time. Do you need to tell me? It's already been arranged. Didn't you notice there's no one else on the ship? That's what Lister said. Could it be that they already sneaked in last night? AUX realized what was happening. Maybe they've done all the bad things, like peeping at the Countess while she bathes, or playing some kind of predator. They're probably hiding in some closet or somewhere else. just waiting tonight to start killing them. Lister speculated that although there are many races in this other world and their aesthetics are different, decent people may indeed be taboo, but when they encounter a ruthless character, they don't care at all and just do it. It's much more expensive than on Earth. The killing is going well, and today we have some auspicious words to say. Morrison, draped in a black cloak, concealed his armory. After all, he was going to someone's house for dinner. If you were decked out in weapons, any business deal he could have made would fall through. Finn was speechless. Although they were from Thieves' Guild, they were far more respectable than the people on the ship. More than an hour later, Linden City. There are many weapon shops and consumable shops next to Adventurers Guild. Since they had nothing else to do, the three of them were just wandering around and decided to accompany Morrison to pick up his weapon. Morrison is inspecting his new gear. Are you going to become Iron Man? Lister looked at Morrison's armor. His fighting style was already flashy enough, but now he'd added a hand cannon. Morrison himself knew a bit about mechanics, so he drew up the blueprints and had the weapon shop owner make them. Customized equipment was nothing new. Skilled adventurers would even adapt their equipment to their own needs. Crossbolts have limited destructive power. Although they are not very accurate, as long as they are close to the face, they will work. Morrison's armor was fitted with a simple projectile launching device. There were 5 small cannons on the edge of the curved iron block. Of course, due to technical limitations, it could not fire continuously. The projectiles had to be reloaded after each shot. Could only be used once in a battle. However, the rapid reloading and silent continuous firing are also advantages. Morrison tugged at the cord on his arm guard, and the crossbow firing mechanism switched on from the other side. Although it wasn't expected to penetrate the armor, its destructive power was still considerable. A true master always has the heart of an apprentice, Lister exclaimed. Brother Shah is already so abnormal, yet he continues to improve himself, which is truly admirable. Morrison himself said that he used to make a living by helping adventurers cheat in their professional title assessment missions, which is basically power leveling, and the pay was extremely generous each time. The assessment tasks usually involve hunting down powerful magical beasts. Many adventurers feel they can't handle them, but they want to advance to the silver or gold rank to receive better tasks, so they hire power levelers. Morrison was a genius. 6 months ago, Lister and Morrison were scouting out a route to rob a nobleman's goods brought in from the port. While wandering around a small town, they encountered a group of adventurers who were also looking for a similar opportunity. Morrison thought he might as well go back to his old ways. After all, it would only take less than an hour to resolve the issue. Not only would he get the mission fee, but he would also get the 8 golden dragons that the adventurers had collected. The total was quite considerable, so why not? Leading the way takes an hour, solving the problem takes 3 seconds. It was a terrifying white giant ape nearly 10 meters tall, roaming the mountains and forests. The residents of the local town were terrified. All the townspeople contributed small amounts, and the Lord contributed the majority, raising 26 gold dragons. They posted a quest in the guild, hoping someone would come to the rescue. That giant ape is strong enough to lift boulders weighing several tons and tear people apart with its bare hands. It takes a large, elite adventure team of several people to defeat it. Morrison, alone, kicked the heel of his boot, and 2 sharp knives popped out from the front of the boot. He was holding 2 daggers. It then becomes so elaborate that it defies description. If one had to use a metaphor, it would be like a mountaineer climbing a vertical cliff using a climbing axe and then fast-forwarding 100 times. Using all 4 limbs, Morrison climbed up the giant ape as if it were his mother, the prototype, climbing upstairs, bursting into flowers of blood and flesh. The giant ape's huge hand slammed down on Morrison, but only hit itself. In less than 2 seconds, it stepped on Morrison's head, the blade whipping around his neck. With a forceful pull, his head was severed from his body, gushing blood, and he was killed on the spot. The adventurers were stunned and insisted on recruiting Morrison. But who among us would be an adventurer? The Lord's vast cargo is waiting to be robbed. It can only be said that people experience joys and sorrows, separations and reunions, while cattle and horses add color to life. Chapter 32 XXXII. Noble Manor. It was almost 7 o'clock in the evening. Lister and his party were already on foot heading towards the Earl's manor. Taking a taxi would attract too much attention, so they didn't want to leave the Earl with any loose ends. As the saying goes, it is only natural to reciprocate, so I brought a small gift. It's not that the Lord is short of money, but it's necessary to show respect. When you go to someone's house for a meal, You should also bring a bottle of wine. It's a common practice. So Lister spent a hefty sum of 2 copper coins to buy a bottle of cheap liquor fermented from sugarcane molasses, which was called rum, but nobody on the ship drank it. Linden City is a vast area, not entirely flat. In the foothills along the inner city, there are aristocratic manors. The night was bright and the stars were few. There is far more than just one moon here. On cloudless nights, one can witness an extremely magnificent spectacle, with celestial bodies in shades of crimson, silver, azure, and blue-violet adorned with a brilliant starry sky. In Morrison's words, this view is so beautiful it's like being banished to hell. The road leading to the Earl's Manor was made of square kiln bricks pieced together seamlessly. Although the group had walked there, the road was so well constructed that the carriage passed over it without any bumps. After passing through the forest for a while and avoiding being seen, the 3 of them came to the main road when they were almost at the manor. From afar, we could see the Earl's brightly lit manor. Even from a distance, the intricate carvings on the walls of the main Baroque building are evident. The arched ribs connect the surrounding buildings, and the Roman columns add an air of grandeur. Under the moonlight, the blue tiles on the roof, with their intricate patterns, are exquisitely detailed. The manor has several entrances. Although Lister sneaked here, he chose the main entrance, otherwise he would have looked like a thief. At the main entrance, a young maid dressed in a maid's uniform was already waiting at the double-leaf Gothic wrought iron gate. Although she was not a beauty, she had regular features and excellent demeanor. Spending a long time in a wealthy family naturally gives one a calm and composed aura, regardless of position. Those arriving at this time must be Black Sail's gang. 6 male waiters wearing black vests and white shirts open the iron gate. Please come in, gentlemen. The banquet is still being prepared. I will take you to the tea room to rest first. The maid wanted to say something more. Finn frowned, adjusted her monocle, and felt looked down upon. Is this some important job? Even if you don't come to pick me up in person, you should at least send a trusted confidant, or at the very least, a steward. Who are you trying to fool with a mere servant? Lister understands Finn very well. He doesn't care about these things himself, but Finn is a very self-important person. He only became a pirate out of necessity. He lost his status, but he still wants to save face. He's quite a conflicted person. Brother Shah, say something. Lister, as the host, seemed rather low-class for arguing unreasonably. Morrison sneered at this and said without further ado, "Call your master out. We're a bunch of guys with high bounties on our hands, and we could lose our lives at any moment. If our master doesn't show up, we've been on the run for years and we're afraid it's a trap. We might start a massacre at any time." Lister hissed, "There's no need to be so harsh." Morrison's face, with its many lives on its hands, exudes an extremely terrifying aura that sends chills down your spine. Even the manor waiters, who had seen many grand occasions, were taken aback and their faces froze. I'll go right away." The maid had difficulty walking and even tripped and fell on flat ground halfway through. Lister frowned, seeing how frightened the little girl was. Less than 2 minutes later, a young man dressed in luxurious fine silk, who was overweight and strong, arrived here. He was the Count's son. In the Duchy of Bima, titles are hereditary. Among the direct descendants of nobles of Count rank and above, even if they do not inherit the title, they are considered honorary nobles by default. They do not need to be awarded medals and are the lowest-ranking barons, who can receive a salary from the court. Some are born into poverty while others are born in Rome. The Count's son dismounted and walked over somewhat stiffly. Lister was speechless. As expected of a nobleman, he needed a means of transportation even for such a short distance. "I'm sorry. My father is dealing with important matters and has instructed me to greet our distinguished guests. I have been negligent." The Count's son knew these men's abilities. He had his eye on them not because of the casino heist, but because of the Blue Bay port incident. Sending them to run a casino was just a way to check if they were imposters. "Oh, I don't care about these things." Lister waved his hand. "It's just that my 2 brothers are timid and afraid something will happen." The Count's son chuckled awkwardly. It was incredible. They killed the entire Blue Bay port lord's family, distributed the money to the commoners, and the local admiral also made money. It was a win-win-win situation. Only the dead lord's family was injured. Not only was he bold, but he also had brains. This was something his father was quite satisfied with. "This way, please. I'll take you to the tea room to rest. It'll only take 15 minutes. The head chef of the estate once won a culinary competition in Erin, The Count's son hadn't finished speaking yet. All right, stop talking so much. Quickly lead the way to the tea shop. My legs are tired from walking all day. Morrison showed no mercy. It wasn't like we were obligated to do this job. If we weren't happy, we'd kill your whole family and leave. Nobles are all the same. This manor with its grand gardens and fountains isn't something you can buy by selling dates on the street. Even selling 10 million dates wouldn't make a difference. We feel no guilt about killing these people. You're the ones begging us for a favor. The Count's son was stunned. He had never been treated like this in his life. Was he a nobleman or was he a nobleman? Don't mind it. We're just people who live at sea, so we might not be that polite. My friend is actually quite kind-hearted, but he's just not good at expressing himself. Seeing that the other party had given her face, Fawn's brows relaxed. Thank you so much. Morrison was amused. The Count's son, with an awkward laugh, led his entourage into the tea room. A little while later, inside the tea room, the decor of aristocratic homes reflects the rich cultural heritage of the Western continent, while the decor of commoners' homes can only be described as, at best, a place for people to live. The tea room alone is larger than a typical pub, with magnificent high-quality fluorite-wrought iron chandeliers. The entire room is in the traditional Bima style, a style that makes extensive use of cool-toned crystal stone and emphasizes horizontal and vertical straight lines. The walls are also covered with obsidian floor tiles, and the overall color scheme is black, white, and gray. After winter arrived, the fireplace was already burning, and the Warcraft leather sofa was specially chosen to be made of black sable fur to blend in with the overall style. It was quite soft and comfortable to sit on. Maids dressed in maid outfits served Lister, massaging his legs and shoulders, which Lister quite enjoyed, while Finn and Morrison refused. Won't you die if you drink this? Morrison took a sip of tea, wondering how the nobles lived and what kind of life they had on pirate ships. The Count's son, who was with the three of them, couldn't find a topic to talk about, nor did he dare to mention who they had robbed or killed. Instead, he asked tactfully what interesting things they had encountered on their adventures. That's an interesting story. Morrison thought for a moment, recalling an encounter in a tavern with an adventurer who groped a waitress. I once stripped someone in a tavern, but I didn't kill him, just cut off his hand. His adventurer group came to my door demanding medical expenses. I said I'd pay, but when I refused, they got angry, so I had to pay everything. Morrison made a throat-slitting gesture. The Count's son was sweating profusely. He shouldn't have asked. He really hoped it would be time for the banquet soon, as he didn't want to be alone with these three killers. Lister wondered. Swan is probably lurking somewhere right now, maybe spying on me. Damn it. Chapter 33 XXXIII. Family dinner. Tight, smooth fingers, soft, white palms, and warm breath lingering near the ear. Lister was extremely pleased. His finger technique was quite sophisticated. Morrison is a restless person. After finishing his tea, he paces back and forth in the room, transforming into a stress monster. Lister's good mood was completely ruined. There was indeed something important to do later. Oh, right, I brought a bottle of wine. Lister almost forgot to give a gift, handing over the rum he had bought for 2 copper coins to the Count's son. The Count's son took it and examined it. He had never encountered this kind of wine before. In his eyes, it was a rare and novel item, probably a valuable specialty of Heavenly Kingdom port. You're here, why bring a gift? The Count's son politely instructed the servants to bring it to the table at the dinner later. What kind of work is it? Your manor should have a lot of retainers, which is exactly what you need to use now. Why do you have to come to us? Lister probed. The manor does have many retainers, most of whom are martial artists. Only professionals familiar with the East Sea region can run it well. The Count's son looked at the clock. Time was almost up. Lister raised an eyebrow, realizing he was almost right. At that moment, the door to the tea room was knocked twice slowly and crisply. After obtaining the Earl's son's permission, the middle-aged butler, dressed in a tailcoat and exuding elegance, entered the room with his hands behind his back. He bowed to the Count's son. Young master, the banquet is ready. The master, madam, and miss are already seated. If it's convenient, I'll take you to the main hall. The butler spoke with utmost respect. The Count's son couldn't have gotten what he wanted. They're stirring things up again, so let's have a good meal today. Morrison made an explosive statement that completely ruined the atmosphere. Turning over means that if you haven't eaten good food for a long time, suddenly eating a lot of greasy and fatty foods can easily cause gastrointestinal discomfort and illness. Please. The middle-aged butler chuckled awkwardly, not expecting these pirates to know any etiquette. The tea room is in an annex building. To get to the main dining hall, you have to go through the main building, which can be reached via an arched bridge connecting the upper floors. Leaving the tea room, walk through the bright corridor to the bridge connecting the buildings. The sea breeze is cool. Standing on this bridge, dozens of meters above the ground, you can see a different view of the entire Linden City, almost all of it. The three of them stopped on the covered bridge. The butler and the Count's son were quite tactful in waiting, knowing that this manor was located in the most prestigious area of Linden City, and such scenery was a rare sight for them. I never expected Linden City to have this side to it. Lister leaned against the railing, marveling at the sight. Over the years, he had visited Linden City many times, but always in the chaotic, muddy areas of Secret Port, slums, and markets. Only from the highest point could he appreciate the magnificence and grandeur of the dense buildings of the East Coast's great port. If we disregard political stances, it's a real shame that these ice-free ports on the East Coast were given to the current brain-dead King Bhima. If the Emperor were to build them directly, they could easily be transformed into something like a beautiful illustration, and the land prices in these cities could increase tenfold or even ninefold. If I weren't wanted, I could open an agency here, do some power leveling for adventurers, and also work as a bounty hunter killing pirates. Before boarding the ship, Morrison's bounty was for the most common murder cases in the Department of Law. Since he hadn't offended the government or any major power, AUX said his background was clean and that being killed by a bounty hunter wasn't a big deal. After all, the Bhima Principality was now plagued by bandits, and the Department of Law system was paralyzed. Most of the officers and soldiers who were specifically tasked with apprehending fugitives were just ghost soldiers on paper, drawing salaries without working. Now, the Department of Law was merely a platform for separatist forces to pool their money to hire bounty hunters to be responsible for local security. The influence of the court was being slowly eroded by the brain-dead king. When I was at Pedden National Arcane Academy, Finn hadn't finished speaking. Stop, you can go now. Lister absolutely didn't want to listen to Finn's pretentious talk. He just read Oxford of the Western Continent every day. You think you've seen it all? You think we're all just country bumpkins? In addition, Lister almost couldn't hold on any longer. He was the only one who could see the edge of the covered bridge below, as he was leaning against the railing. I wonder where Swan learned all these skills. If it weren't for Lister's strong mental fortitude, he would have been terrified. Swan was clinging to the bottom of the covered bridge, hanging upside down with amazing anti-gravity finger strength, only her head showing. She even had one hand free to give Lister a no-go sign, seemingly unafraid of falling dozens of meters to her death. Lister felt relieved and sent Swan to scout for any ambushes. Better safe than sorry. It seemed that they were indeed looking for a serious job. After the group crossed the covered bridge, Swan nimbly climbed onto the bridge and followed behind as if nothing had happened, making no sound at all. 5 minutes later, main hall. The room was exceptionally spacious, with 3 crystal chandeliers hanging to provide soft lighting. Directly opposite the long table made entirely of precious stone, featuring a wabi-sabi style with a wood grain pattern. The panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows almost hollowed out the entire outer wall, and the sea breeze swaying the curtains. The most sophisticated interior designers must know how to use light and shadow. There are only 3 chandeliers in the room that focus the light on the dining table, along with the natural light from the night view and the sky above the window. Exquisitely carved horseshoe-leg chairs made of premium golden Nanmu wood, and snowfox fur cushions that were fashionable among the nobility. Welcome to my humble abode. Please forgive any shortcomings in our hospitality. The Count greeted the 3 men with polite conversation as they entered. The Count sat at the head of the long table, dressed casually in his home clothes, without any special attire. His wife sat beside him, looking incredibly young. To his right sat the Count's eldest daughter, followed by the Count's son, and then a confidant with a resolute face. This is a humble abode? My ship is a bottomless abyss. The Western Continent's 99 layers of abyss are said to be equivalent to the 18 layers of hell in Lister's hometown. Lister and his party sat on the left side, not caring about the order, but for convenience, Lister was closest to the Earl. The seating arrangement at a nobleman's table is very particular. One's status can be discerned from the seating arrangement. Morrison's eyelids twitched. The old Count looked to be in his 50s with graying temples. His wife was even younger than their daughter, incredibly beautiful with a snow-white neck exposed. She wore a low-cut evening gown with a crystal necklace around her neck. Who could resist her? She was definitely a stepmother with a refined taste. Everyone knows the captain's name, and these two must be the famous pirates of the East Coast. The Count carefully considered his words because pirates' nicknames are usually very unpleasant, often chosen from the worst words, and they also need to be popular, easy to spread in order to become widely known. They are usually extremely vulgar, so it's better to just use their titles, first mate and gunnery officer. Because the Black Sail Gang is extremely arrogant, they are on the East Coast Governor's blacklist. The bounty poster clearly states what positions they hold and what weapons they are skilled in, essentially providing bounty hunters with a free guide. Their weaknesses are laid out right there, so go kill them quickly. You flatter me. They're just a bunch of refugees who went to sea to make a living. They all have bad reputations. Lister started chatting with the Earl, rambling on about this and that, but never getting to the point. After some polite exchanges, the Count began by introducing his family members, including a trusted confidant. Just as he was introducing his trusted confidants, I don't know what skills you pirates have that have caught the Earl's eye. The confidant suddenly started to cause trouble. Chapter 34 XXXIV East Coast Professional Team. These are all distinguished guests I invited, so don't be ridiculous. The Count rebuked him coldly. I'm afraid these people are all talk and no action, and they'll ruin the master's important plans. The trusted confidant's reply was firm and resolute. Lister smiled without saying a word. This confidant always wore iron armor while eating, with a great sword standing beside him. He must be the Earl's personal bodyguard, or at least a master. He could easily be an honorary adventurer. Everyone was having a good chat, so was this confidant just looking for trouble? Of course not. It must have been the Earl's instruction to do one last test at the last minute to see if he could handle the important task. There's really no need for acting. Earl, let's not beat around the bush. We're all straightforward people. Let's talk through the window. The food hasn't been served yet, so we can practice our skills. I'll let you see for yourself that I didn't get to where I am today just by talking. I have real skills. Your friend is no match for these two gentlemen. Lister spread his arms wide, and both General Finn and Brother Shaw were there. Either one was a true macho man. What do you mean? The Count probed. We can spar. Lister gestured for Morrison to proceed, though he spoke confidently. He still had a slight concern. The space was narrow, and Finn's high-level area of effect damage wouldn't be able to be unleashed. Since it's a direct recruitment by boss, having some portfolio material is expected. However, all my skills are lethal. If I accidentally cripple this knight. Morrison stood up, unconcerned. Swords have no eyes, and physical pain is inevitable. It's nothing to be ashamed of. The knight's confidant didn't waste any words and also stood up. In that case, I'll give you 2 moves. Morrison retreated to a more open area after moving to the dining table. No need, please come. The knight also retreated to the back, his boots positioned at the level of his shoulders, his knees bent and lowered, wielding 2 hybrid greatswords with gleaming blades, forged with magic stones, radiating a faint purple-blue aura. Is that so? Morrison lifted his cloak, revealing a full arsenal that momentarily startled the knight, but the effect was fleeting. The 2 throwing knives had already been launched. The sound of them cutting through the air was incredibly loud. The knight had exceptional dynamic vision. It was just a throwing knife. He immediately blocked it with his sword, the broad blade of his greatsword blocking both knives in a straight line. But the force of that throwing knife was terrifyingly powerful. Although the knight's stance was not broken, his plate boots scraped the ground as he was knocked back half a meter. Morrison gave a cold laugh. First, establish a fixed perception. 2 throwing knives can be blocked, but what about 3? The speed was so fast that it was like a phantom, and the attack was impossible to see. After the flying knife shot out, Morrison himself attacked like a ghost in the wind. The knight managed to block 2 throwing knives, his hands slightly numb and tingling. Where did he get that cannonball-throwing strength? He dared not catch the 3rd knife, so he turned his head to dodge. The knife pierced through the wall, creating a large hole that sent dust flying. Morrison charged in. The knight decisively threw away his greatsword and drew his broadsword to engage in close combat. With the clanging of metal against metal, sparks flew like a waterfall. Morrison's dagger was made of scrap metal, no match for the luxurious weapon made of gold and dragons. It was already showing signs of weakness, cracking and about to shatter. Morrison always had the advantage in equipment. He wore a light alligator skin coat that barely qualified as armor, while the knight was covered in steel armor. Morrison could have killed the knight right then and there, showcasing the advantages of his new equipment, but considering that he was on someone else's turf, he had to give him some face and hold back. He reached for the knight's neck with one hand, but the hand covered by the armor held it firmly and he couldn't move an inch. At this point, Morrison was at a significant disadvantage. Unexpectedly, Morrison kicked his heel, and a sharp knife popped out from the front of his boot. In the blink of an eye, less than 3 seconds had passed since Morrison lifted his cloak. The strength, speed, and reaction time of these masters were all incredibly powerful. It was hard to imagine that a human could do such a thing. Morrison used the force of being held by the knight to lower his center of gravity and hang his weight on the knight. He spun half a circle in the air with his body tilted to the side in an eerie arc, and kicked the knight's right shoulder holding the sword directly. The force of the kick broke through the armor and the sharp knife pierced the flesh and went into the bone. The knight's right hand immediately gave way. His broadsword fell to the ground with a clang, and he and his armor crashed to the ground. Morrison then flipped him over and stomped on him with a fluid and extremely smooth movement. Morrison pulled out the dagger from his boot, and blood gushed out. The knight was instantly killed. The Count and his family were dumbfounded. They had never seen such a tricky and bizarre fighting style. "I've made a fool of myself." Morrison wiped the blood off the dagger, kicked his heel and pulled it back, adding, "I know a little about the anatomy of most creatures, especially humans. The knife on my shoe just now hit his tendon, which is why he lost his strength. He needs to be treated as soon as possible, otherwise his hand might be ruined." Lister gasped. "You really know how to show off." Finn's eyes flashed. Morrison had never used his full strength. He had many weapons, but they were all cobbled together from scraps. It was as if he was challenging his own limits. This person could not be underestimated. With such skills, where in the Western continent could he not go? But they had been hanging out together for more than a year. Could he really be a scoundrel? "If my skills are inferior, I will admit defeat." The knight readily stood up, admitting he had to admit defeat. The doctor arrived quickly and took the knight for treatment. After the little incident passed, Lister and the Earl chatted for a while about all sorts of things like classic middle-aged people discussing current affairs. No substance whatsoever, nor is any substance needed. They were just spouting nonsense. At this point, the dishes began to be served on the long table. They were prepared by a master chef who had achieved a top 24 finish in the Arran culinary competition. The selection of ingredients, cooking techniques, plating aesthetics, appearance, aroma, and taste were all impeccable. All of them are hearty dishes, featuring every kind of expensive ingredient from land, sea, and air. There is a large dish made of giant prawns and various seafood delicacies. The light-colored sauce is crystal clear, and the meat is so fresh and tender that it is shaking when it is placed on the table. These shrimp can't be caught on the East Coast. They're a specialty of the Western continent's inland waters, something ordinary people can only dream of. Won't eating this get you thrown into seafood hell? Before the Earl could even touch his fork, Morrison picked up a piece of shrimp with his hand and put it in his mouth, only to find his intestines turning inside out again. This friend is incredibly skilled. I wonder where he learned it. I'll send my son to experience it for himself. The Earl considered himself to have seen countless people, and there were many capable retainers on his estate, but he had never seen anyone like Morrison. The Count's son laughed awkwardly, realizing he was no match for that kind of talent. Lister was speechless. "Your son has the makings of an emperor, doesn't he?" "Well, learning alone isn't enough. It also depends on how tough your life is," Morrison replied casually. Seeing that Morrison was unwilling to talk about it, I didn't press him further. The atmosphere suddenly fell silent. The Count and his family had no appetite. Morrison was the only one eating. The rest of the people had gloomy expressions. Lister knew it was time to get down to business. "I heard from your son that this big event requires someone familiar with the East Sea region. We don't know what the situation is, but the sooner we know, the better we can prepare." Lister went straight to the point. "You're tasked with picking up 3 people and transporting them to Heavenly Kingdom Port. A month later, someone will be waiting for you there. You just hand those 3 people over to them, and that's it." The Count spoke calmly. Lister nodded, just as he had expected. Who are these 3 people? This is what Lister cares about most. Chapter 35 XXXV. Buying and Selling. The monsoon cold front on the East Coast was biting cold, its chill seeping into the skin and causing a slight chill to rise. In a daze, several thick clouds covered the light from the sky, making it a little darker. The Count did not reply, but simply gestured for the butler, who was waiting nearby, to hand Lister a letter. It's not wartime now, so privateering licenses are issued for free. In times of peace, they're more valuable than gold. The Count also abandoned his previous politeness, revealing a hint of the imposing presence of a superior. Lister certainly understood this principle. There are no permanent enemies, only permanent golden dragons. When war breaks out, the East Coast governor will have to serve tea to the bigwigs of Heavenly Kingdom Port. The strength of Heavenly Kingdom Port is an emergency reserve force, which is also an advantage for the East Coast pirates. If the Black Sail Gang didn't have top-notch connections in every case, Lister would have been working in the prime real estate of the inland sea long ago. In peacetime, a letter of marque is practically a guarantee of absolute power. Within the territorial waters of the Principality of Bima, it can act with impunity, even plundering merchant ships from hostile nations with zero diplomatic goodwill on the high seas. If trouble arises, the governor and the principality will take responsibility. Although the Bima court is currently powerless, a weakened giant is still a force to be reckoned with, far beyond the reach of small, functional states serving as geopolitical sacrifices or strategic buffers. While the brain-dead king may be unable to wield a sword, the powerful nobles and courtiers still can. The Principality of Bima receives financial support from the East Coast, so even if the overall economy is bad, it won't be too bad. The common people are impoverished, but the lords are rich. However, the major nobles in the interior also feel that a storm is brewing, so they forcibly collect taxes and put all the money into the army. If you use 100,000 volts of electric fishing, I will directly use the Thunder Emperor scripture. They are all up in arms. Therefore, there are too many people fleeing famine, and they are all tenant farmers who are insolvent. The Western continent has many countries, large and small, but 90% of them are just the jungle for top-tier players. The real battles are between a handful of established powerhouses and the mood of the Western continent's #1 male emperor. In short, in peacetime, privateer captains were already more powerful than some minor nobles with worthless fiefdoms. Lister opened the letter and read its contents. It was written by Bima Koshai's official chai, meaning that he didn't care, it was just a matter of the Earl making a sound. It is handwritten. The letter bore a red official seal and the official chai family crest, a rather majestic eagle. Whether in the Principality of Bima or anywhere in the Western continent, any carpenter engaged in seal engraving must register with the Department of Law. In the information-flowing environment of the Western continent, there are two ways to punish those who illegally forge seals. If it is a seal for private commercial use, it will only result in imprisonment or being sent to do hard labor. But to illegally forge an official seal is audacious. The gallows will be the only punishment. And the Department of Law will not send ghost soldiers, but proper officials from the mortal world. Lister didn't waste any words. He knew he had no use for the letter. The Earl had to give his approval, so he handed the letter back to the steward. We already know the Earl's sincerity, but we need to know who he is transporting and his background. How do I know if he is transporting royalty from somewhere, or if he is hunting down the strongest experts from the Western continent? The fact that you came to us means that something must have gone wrong and the news has leaked out. It's not like you're just taking a boat trip to Heavenly Kingdom Port. Finn believed that the Earl was offering such generous terms in order to buy their lives and make them work, and that everything had to be explained clearly. The Count tapped 2 fingers on the table and replied, "First of all, they are not royalty, so you can rest assured. Secondly, so far, there have been no mishaps. They should have already crossed the Great Wall and are settling in the Central and Western tribes by now. Traveling by official road at full speed, it should have taken them about half a month. I am only doing this to be absolutely sure." Seeing the Earl evade the question, Finn was not satisfied with the answer. It was impossible for there to be no flaws. Someone was definitely following this direction. It was just a matter of time before the pursuers found out. No matter how shady things were, there was no need to go to such an obsessive degree. The handover should have taken place in Linden City, not in that godforsaken place called Heavenly Kingdom Port. Seeing that Finn was about to speak, Lister stopped him. If you're a pirate and you don't risk your life, what kind of pirate are you? This job is crucial for Black Sail. He can either continue to live in this wretched East Coast, or he can roam the world and dominate it. If he's not royalty, he has to be a very important figure, some old pro who was rescued from the great prison, or the illegitimate son of some big shot. I understand what the Earl means. At the very least, the origins of the 2 guards must be revealed. Until the delivery is completed, I will not disturb these 3 gentlemen. They will have a private room and special treatment, and I will not interfere. If there are no problems, we will accept the offer. You know I am a straightforward person. This is my bottom line. If we cannot reach an agreement, I am known for my integrity in the underworld. I will absolutely keep my mouth shut for the Earl and will be heading back to my pirate den in the next few days. Lister said calmly, once you're on the ship, you're at my mercy. Just by assessing the guard's abilities, I can roughly gauge the protagonist's identity. The Count frowned. Lister and his two companions knew that if the negotiations failed, they would have to fight the Earl, so they couldn't just leave as they had yesterday. Lister decided to show off a little. He put 2 fingers to his lips and whistled. It was a secret signal within Black Sail. It wasn't complicated. If it took more than 2 seconds, it meant there was no problem. If it was short, it meant to start killing immediately. Swan had been resting on the windowsill, but now that things had gotten down to business, he had climbed up to the ceiling. Seeing Lister put on his mask, he prepared a secret code. Swan and Archer's emotional intelligence is worlds apart. Knowing that he needed to show some strength, he fell from the ceiling like a ghost, silently landing directly between the Earl and his young wife. The Count's young wife clutched her chest and screamed. The Count's eldest daughter and son, who were standing to the side, were so startled that they dropped their cutlery and stumbled back several steps, chair and all. The armor of 10 trusted guards, jingling and clanging, stood guard in the corner of the room, surrounding the group of 4. Stop! Everyone, stand back up. The Earl ordered the guards around him to stop, but he was also a little flustered. If this tiger people were to attack with a dagger, getting less than 30 centimeters away from him, would these guards stand in for him? He knew that Lister wouldn't kill him, nor would he dare to. He was just bluffing. His city wall and the secret port where their ship was docked were all his men. It wouldn't be easy for them to break out. I've heard about Linden City for a long time. Admiral once said that the most troublesome groups in the East Sea region now aren't the big pirates. They all have big businesses and are no longer associated with thugs. The most rampant gangs now are those that have made their way through violence and ruthlessness, with the Black Sail being one of them, and they certainly live up to their reputation. The Count sighed, no longer afraid that Swan would kill him, and he had already spoken frankly, even using terms like thugs and pirates. Good news doesn't travel far, but bad news travels fast. My brothers are all Robin Hood-like heroes who rob the rich to help the poor. Those people have just demonized them because of the rumors. Whether it works or not, the Earl needs to give a definite answer. Lister lit a cigarette and took a puff. That's why he became an Earl. Give this tiger people friend a seat and open 2 more bottles of the estate's finest wines. The Count casually gave instructions to the butler. Lister was relieved. It was settled. With a hostage, he wasn't worried about the Earl not paying the balance.